Hey, everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking with Julie Feldman. Julie, it's great to see you. We were talking before we went on. It's been a long time since I've seen you face to face, probably because of COVID and this and the other. But I had your mom on the other day, and she was great. I got actually a lot of great feedback from having her on. And of course, she's a great mom and said, you got to have Julie on the show. So I'm glad you're here. It's good to see you
She's
again.
my agent.
Yeah. It's good to see you again. But we're going to talk about, you are a nationally recognized nutrition expert, counselor, speaker, author, spokesperson, who's helped thousands of individuals live a healthier life. Your company is Thrive Nutrition and Wellness.
Yes.
Let's talk about, we're recording this end of 2022, post Thanksgiving, right before Christmas. The average person, I think, gains about 8 to 10 pounds during that time. Gym memberships skyrocket in January, and everybody's, looking to, kind of shed the weight and, start fresh. So let's maybe start off and talk about how do you consciously eat Thanksgiving through Christmas?
Okay, we'll just jump right in.
Yeah.
So actually, my answer to that would be the same as I would just say how you consciously eat all the time. And it's actually a big part of how I practice is focusing on mindful eating. We all are inundated with nutrition information. And for most people, not all, but for most people, they kind of have a sense as to what they're supposed to be doing, right? Like they've read an article, they've watched Good Morning America, they've read a book, maybe they hear people talking. So there's a pretty decent amount of nutrition information out there for sure.
Yeah.
But most people come to me and say, I know what to do, but I'm just not doing it. And the vast majority of the work that I do with my clients is on the execution and really helping people to understand how food plays a role in their life and how their relationship with food is really probably, if not the most, one of the most intense relationships that they have.
Yeah.
And how to kind of navigate that. And my approach to that is what I call value-driven nutrition. And I'll kind of explain that just a little bit because it sounds sort of abstract. Yeah. But I help people kind of come to an understanding of what their core values are. And by the exercise that we use to do that is called a values sort. So we basically take like 140-ish words and we narrow it down to about 5 words. And these 5 words end up becoming sort of your own core values, like your own personal mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
And we use these words to help us make decisions, food decisions, exercise decisions, and just literally any decision, a financial decision, how I spend my time, any choice that I'm making. We're really focusing on allowing our values to help us make a choice that feels good to us. So there are certain decisions between Thanksgiving and Christmas that feel really important to us. Like for me, for example, one of my 5 words is tradition. So next week, that incredible host that you had or guest that you had on your show, Ellen, she will be making Thanksgiving, and she makes a lot of special things that we only have on Thanksgiving. And when I eat those things on Thanksgiving, for me, they feel very value driven because they're helping me to get closer to tradition and family, to my 5 words. However, there will be things at that meal that just aren't really that interesting to me. Maybe a piece of bread. I don't really care about eating that. That doesn't feel important to me. Also, the food that is eaten on Thanksgiving maybe doesn't feel important the next day. It might just feel important on that day. So if I can sort of recognize not just what am I choosing, but really more importantly, why I'm making that decision, it really starts to change things. And what's powerful is if I make a decision that feels like it's value driven, it feels good to me before, during, and after.
Yeah.
The opposite of that is making a decision because of like stress or anxiety or fear or exhaustion. Those decisions only feel good while I'm making them. They don't feel good after. And if they don't feel good to me after, then I find myself sort of sabotaging and feeling shame and guilt, and then saying, oh, I already ate that. I may as well just, eat everything and I'll start over again in January. So if we can continue to be making choices that feel good to us in the moment, it allows us to just sort of keep moving and not sort of getting stuck in kind of stuck in the
Yeah.
mud for too long.
Yeah. So I love I love the way you talked about that, the value-driven piece. It's like any company, right? You're moving from your core values. You're asking questions, you're in recruiting, you're making sure people are in alignment. And
Yeah.
so I just say that because from a business perspective, think community, it's just transferring it from one world to the next. But I do want to talk to you about kind of that, the danger zones, right? And so you're talking about, what will feel good after. Well, what are what is your guidance with getting kind of connecting with your future self of like, hey, if I'm going to eat this now, how do I remember what I'm going to feel like, or remind myself tomorrow morning? Like, for me, my eating really is like 6 to 9 p.m. is when I crave everything. Right. And during that time, like all the theory goes out the window at times.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
it's such a great topic to talk about.
yeah. So in those moments where you're like, how do you, well, I don't think you need to keep it 24 hours a day, but you're the expert. But two, how do you kind of bring in the voice when you just kind of fire the voice?
So it's a great question. My take is that I think too often we think about my reaction versus seeing this as more prevention. And everybody would probably, oh, I shouldn't say everybody, most people would describe 6 to 9 or 5 to 11 or something like that as sort of the toughest part of the day. And
Yeah.
there are a couple of reasons why that is. One is we, generally speaking, don't do a good job of nourishing ourselves throughout the day. I mean, you're talking to people in business all day long.
Right.
People get busy. So many people don't eat breakfast. So many people are skipping lunches. They're eating really minimally. So we end up backloading our day with nutrition, meaning we're expecting ourselves to get the vast majority of what our body needs during that afternoon period of time, which also happens to be the time where I'm most physically tired. I'm most drained. I've already made hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions that day. So I'm experiencing decision fatigue towards the end of the day. I'm just kind of running out of steam. So one tool is to think about nutrition as prevention. How do I get to 6 o'clock at night feeling pretty okay? A main reason why we have cravings is because I'm too hungry, I'm undernourished for that day, or my blood sugar has been up and down throughout the day. I'm just grabbing random stuff, and there hasn't really been a lot of thought or well put together meals.
Yeah.
So that's going to lead anybody to feel overly hungry and kind of just say, screw it. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm just going to eat whatever's here. So we have to always back up. So wherever you're eating or finding like there's a problem with one of your types of choices, I always think of that as the last domino in a long line of dominoes. And so we can't just stop that one last domino from falling, right? You've watched those domino things where they see like the whole thing. So we have to start kind of going backwards and saying, okay, well, what was happening before that? And what was happening before that? And what was happening before that? And then I start to kind of put those pieces together. So it wasn't really the 6 to 9 time that was the danger zone. It was like, oh, this started with breakfast. This started the night before. This started where I didn't go to sleep until 2 a.m. So I start to kind of piece those things together. I really teach the idea of front loading your day with nutrition, where I'm getting about 70% of what I need, like by 4-ish o'clock, let's just say. So I really only am left feeling the need for a small portion, technically, of what my body needs, versus most people are kind of doing the opposite. Maybe they eat 30% and then they're expecting themselves to get 70% later.
Yeah. But thanks for that. I like that. I mean, I like the philosophy of what you're talking about, but talk about intermittent fasting for a minute, right? That seems to be something that is on every, scroll of social media. People are talking about it. Intermittent fasting. Some people start eating at 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, right? So I just bring that up because, to your point, if you want to get 70% in by 3, 4 o'clock, I just want to kind of dive into that for a minute.
Sure. So I don't teach intermittent fasting. There was actually a study published just the other day that showed increased risk for eating disorders when somebody is following an intermittent fasting plan. Eating disorders, by the way, are not unique to, teenagers or to just women. Eating disorders and disordered eating patterns are really a huge source of health conditions and lack of ability to be present in our life and to be productive. And a lot of people are walking around with very disordered belief systems around their body and around food. And so, for that reason, intermittent fasting to me feels like sort of prescribing an eating disorder. And what we know about restrictive eating in general is that if my eating feels restricted, it really statistically significantly increases the likelihood of me binging. So if I feel this sense that I can only eat from, whatever time whatever
Yeah.
window I've created for myself emotionally, it can really create a lot of behaviors that would be very binge-like, if not by definition, binging.
Yeah.
So we see the same results. Does intermittent fasting show nice results in terms of weight loss? Yeah, but so does pretty much every diet.
Right. You can look at the stats of, yeah. So I
Yeah.
love that. So talk about like when your Thrive Nutrition,
Yeah.
your value base. What is, and you mentioned this earlier, there's so many things out there, so many different ways, so many what is the way that you guide people to eat? I know a lot of times, you even go to I think it's MyFitnessPal, you can count your macros, you can count your calories, you can count your this, you can, what do you prescribe?
Sure. So the diet research that's out there is, you know, it's just sort of, I think of the diet industry as like Vegas, right? Vegas was not built on everybody going to Vegas and winning money. Vegas was built on people going to Vegas and losing money. The diet industry, this $1 trillion industry, is built on people being extremely unsuccessful. We have to remember that whenever we're sold the next book, the next this, the next that, it 95 or so percent, so there's probably some variation depending on which diet you're looking at, of people who really attempt a diet are unsuccessful on that diet when we do any sort of long-term longitudinal look back at, oh, you were on this diet 5 years ago. How are we doing now?
Yeah.
So I really try in what I do to not feel like I am part of that machine that is prescribing something that I sort of ultimately know isn't going to be successful. So I really try to move away from counting, weighing, measuring, all of those sort of very restrictive ways of thinking about nutrition, because they just simply don't work. And I don't think I would feel okay about what the work that I was doing if every day I knew I was telling people to do something that I knew was not going to be helpful to
Yeah.
them in the long run. So I think of my approach to this is sort of in two layers. There's like the nutrition science piece of this. So in that part, I talk about eating consistently and sort of eating on a bit of a schedule. Not that it has to be like to the minute or anything, but making sure I'm fueling my body about every 3 to 4 hours while I'm awake is sort of step one. And then step two is focusing on, so there's actually 4 questions we kind of talk about in nutrition, where I talk about in nutrition: when to eat, what to eat, how to eat, and why I'm eating. So most of the time when we think about diets, we're just thinking, tell me what I should eat. Everybody says that to me, right? People know what I do and everyone's like, what should I be eating? It's such a bigger question than that. So the step one is the when, and that would be the sort of eating schedule, which for most people would probably have you eating somewhere between 3 to 6 times a day, depending on how long of an awake, productive day you were having. Then there's the what to eat. So focusing on high fiber, sort of minimally processed, high fiber carbohydrates, incorporating proteins, incorporating heart healthy fats, and doing so at these intervals of time, staying hydrated. I don't sell any products, so I don't sell any supplements or shakes or anything like that. But sometimes, depending on what somebody's lifestyle is like and what they might be dealing with in their life, we might do some micronutrient supplementation. So maybe some multivitamin or extra vitamin D. We are already in winter here, so we have lots of months here without a lot of sun exposure. So certainly taking some vitamin D during that time. So focusing on some of those micronutrient pieces, but really trying to make this conversation much more sort of about abundance than restriction. So there's really phenomenal and interesting research being done on gut health and the impact of how healthy our gut is on our everything from our mental health to our digestive function to, literally there's sort of no stone unturned that people are starting to make correlations between what's happening in my gut and all of these long lists of diagnoses and things that we deal with, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and depression and anxiety. Really, really interesting stuff. And one of those studies, in fact, shows that we need to eat 30 different plants a week. 30 different plants a week in order to have enough biodiversity in our gut to have sort of optimal health outcomes.
Yeah.
So it's a really different way of looking at nutrition for somebody who's always just thought, I need to be on my FitnessPal and counting calories. I actually don't like my FitnessPal at all. Most of the time I'm having people delete that off their phone. And thinking about this more from an abundance standpoint, it feels different to us than feeling restricted. It feels like I'm worthy, like I'm taking care of myself, versus that restriction feels automatically like I need a babysitter. I can't trust myself. There's just a lot of negative self-talk that happens when I'm following a more restrictive pattern.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the what to eat. I really try to focus on abundance, whether that's lots of different colored things, just different consistencies, different flavors. Herbs and spices are really nice things to start to add in and kind of start to look at food through a different lens. How I eat is also a really, really interesting conversation. How I eat, I call this food foreplay. So I know we don't usually talk about foreplay when it comes to food, but we do want to kind of prepare our body for eating. Our body goes through this whole really quite intricate process of digestion. And most of the time we're just running and grabbing something and not really thinking about it. And we're compromising our ability to digest and absorb our food appropriately as we do that. So a cool little trick, you have this nerve called your vagus nerve that sort of turns on your digestive tract. And when I say that, I mean your body's going to produce enough saliva and your stomach's going to make enough acid and your pancreas is going to make enzymes and your gallbladder's doing things and your small and large intestine are starting to move. And all of these things have to happen in order for me to properly digest our food. And we can sort of turn that vagus nerve on by doing 3 easy things. One is singing. So I will spare you and not sing for you right now. One of them is humming. So you could hum through the ABCs a couple of times. And the third thing that you can do to engage that vagus nerve is to gargle. So yeah. And it kind of, if you think about it, if I'm doing one of those 3 things, I'm pretty much in a pretty calm and safe space. I'm not going to be humming or singing or gargling if there's an impending disaster. And my body really kind of turns off digestion if I'm in fight or flight, if I think things are really stressful or anxious. And obviously there are, a lot of people who are living very stressed out and anxious days.
Yeah.
And if I come to every single meal in that state, my digestion and absorption are just not where we want them to be. And then people are dealing with a lot of issues. A big portion of my practice are referrals from GI doctors, people with all kinds of digestive symptoms, constipation, diarrhea, just pain, lots of gas and bloating. And a lot of that has to do with what's happening in our gut and how we are eating.
Yeah.
So how we eat is interesting. And then the why we eat for me is that values conversation and really helping clients to understand what, as my mom would say, what drives them, but what's really important to them, what their values are, what do they want more of in their life, and starting to let them ask themselves, is this getting me closer to one of these things that I've identified that is as really important to me?
Yeah, it's great. It's like a mini master's class on food and
there you go.
And mindset and who knew that you could turn on your digestive system by just singing, humming, or gargling. That's great.
Yeah, we prepare for so many other things, but we don't ever think about preparing to eat.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about how you got to start this business. I love talking to all types of people on this podcast, and success is never a straight line. And give us the Reader's Digest version on how you got to this business.
Sure. So this is a personal organic journey for me, beginning really as a middle school kid, probably when I became very aware of my own body, and dealt with weight issues as a teenager. Got healthy in high school. Thankfully, probably just wasn't genetically wired to develop any kind of major eating disorder, but started exercising and thinking, being more thoughtful about my own food choices in high school. Went to college, pre-med. I thought at that time in the 90s, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a dietitian. So I thought I knew I wanted to do something. I wanted to help kids sort of be healthy, because for me, it was a very transformative process. And I thought the only way I could do that was to become a pediatrician. And so I was pre-med all through undergrad at Michigan, and then decided sort of very last minute that I did not want to go to medical school. I took the MCATs and everything, and connected with a peer of mine now and a good friend, and she was a dietitian, and I had never even looked at it, and found my path through that, which led me to my first job, which was at Providence Hospital in Southfield. And it was a phenomenal job. There were incredible dietitians there, really a solid group of women who taught me so much and empowered me. And Providence is across the street from Fox 2 News. So when I was there, I had the opportunity to do a lot of television and media work. And that really opened just a ton of doors for me. I was offered to write a book. I was, a paid ambassador for a lot of different food companies. And when I had my children, I started working less and less at the hospital. My first, who's 20 and a half. When I had her, I started being part-time. And then when I had my middle daughter, who turns 18 next week, that I knew like I needed to figure out something else to have more flexibility. I was going to be losing money paying for daycare for both of the kids and working at that hospital job. So, right, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. So I had to reinvent myself, and I knew what I wanted to do. And I started seeing clients in the private setting, and then I pretty much was just contingent at the hospital. So my practice was born 18 years ago as well. And I went from just sharing office space, sort of squatting in different doctors' offices and seeing clients, even doing home visits, to having my own space. And now I work from the computer. I haven't seen a client in person since COVID started, although I still have my office, so I have to decide what I'm doing with that. But yeah, I've been really open and fortunate to have a ton of incredible experiences, and I work with amazing physicians who refer their patients to me, and I actually do a lot of public speaking and teaching around the country, and I educate other dietitians too on certain methods that I
That's cool.
have created. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I'm starting to enter into the corporate wellness category too. So that's sort of an exciting new thing on the horizon. Yes.
I think that's a great space to go into. It is. I think a lot of companies, I see a lot of the companies, I like you, COVID changed my business. I mean, I have clients all over the world. I'm Zooming all day. I'm Teamsing all day. I'm conference calls all day. But I see, especially, I see companies that I coach, and I see companies that I don't coach that I read about, they're taking a deeper responsibility on the wellness of their people. I mean, from a retention standpoint, from just, they know they can get more productivity out of them. And it just makes it a little bit more human of a culture. So yeah, I think we're going to start to see more of that. I think it's great. Julie, this has been great. It's great. I mean, congratulations on your business and
Thank you.
18 years and everything that you are doing and have done. It's great. Quick speed round. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Since your mom was just on the show, best piece of advice your mom's ever given you?
Oh my God, she gives me so much advice. Probably the best thing she ever told me was to not be surprised by people's really consistent behavior.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. A book that's had a big impact on you?
The Body Keeps a Score is the name of the book, and
Yeah,
it
I know
talks
that
about,
book. Yeah.
you know, that book. Yeah, it's a very powerful book, and it has really informed my practice tremendously.
Yeah, that book was referred to me years ago by my therapist, and it's an intense book. It's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I actually, so what I educate other dietitians on is trauma-informed nutrition counseling,
yeah,
and just understanding the significant role that trauma plays in a lot of people's ability to take care of themselves. So
yeah.
yes,
So
hugely
good.
impactful. Yes.
And finish your sentence, Julie. One small thing that everybody can do to gain control of their nutrition is,
Journal.
yeah. Okay, good. Tell everybody who
Journaling.
you're. Go ahead.
No, journaling is the number one predictor of long-term success. So
Yeah,
you don't necessarily have to write down even what you're eating, but just having a safe space to write down anything is really, really helpful.
yeah, it's awesome. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are and where they can connect with you, Julie.
Awesome. I see children and adults for pretty much anything that you can think someone might want to talk to a dietitian about. And again, you don't have to have something wrong. It can be just prevention, wanting to make sure you're optimizing your health. And they can find me on my website, thrivenutritioncounseling.com.
I love it. Yeah, Think Community. Many of you know I'm a business coach. I work with successful people who are stuck. I get them unstuck. This podcast is a great vehicle to have guests on that can also continue to get you unstuck. Julie, you shared a ton of stuff today. I mean, this was like a mini master's class on food and mindset. I loved it. And it's great spending some time and talking to you. But I just want to extract one thing that I think is really important. I do this, I find it very useful in many ways, is the routine of journaling. I find that when I sit down and I journal, sometimes I get my best ideas because it creates kind of a quiet space for you to just kind of get grounded and just, have things just kind of spill out of you. And so I would recommend that everybody try that. I do mine in notes because I can type very fast, but you can write it pen to paper, pencil, whatever it is. But especially when you can throw data, I love the line that if you don't bring data to a meeting, then people will just use their own opinions. And so when you throw out that it is statistically, the best for long-term success, then why not try it? So Think Community, if Julie can help you, please reach out to her. You can reach her at thrivenutritioncounseling.com. And if I can help you in any way, you can reach me at johndwoskin.com. Julie, thanks. It was great seeing you.
Thanks,
I saw your brother at the golf club who told me you got to interview my mom. And then I interviewed your mom. She said, got to interview Julie. So lots of love for the whole family, and
Awesome.
great seeing you. And
You too.
thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. See you soon.